watching Portfolio Makeover, an original series from ETF Guy TV. I'm Ron DeLegge, and on today's program, we're going to examine a $227,000 retirement plan for RP in Bend, Oregon. I'm going to tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and what can be improved. Also, at the end of today's show, we're going to give you a quick recap of the Secure Act 2.0, which has made some major changes affecting retirees with required minimum distributions, also known as RMDs. I'm going to tell you all about that. Let's introduce RP without further ado. RP is from beautiful Bend, Oregon, and this gives you a little context about who we're helping on today's show. He's 59 years old, married. He's in the construction business. And he considers himself a moderate risk taker. He's self-employed. He manages this SEP IRA on his own will and with his own knowledge. He's got rental income that will be used to partially fund his retirement. And he considers himself, as we said earlier, a moderate risk taker. Has no major health problems and plans to work another 10 years. And this I think is important for those of us in this situation where we're self-employed. It may seem like we haven't saved enough money. I'm going to give you some thoughts on that in a second, but some concerns that RP has: taxes, cost of healthcare, staying ahead of inflation, avoiding big financial setbacks. Listen, this is stuff that we can all identify with, RP. So you're talking our same language. We're going to help you on today's program. I want to mention, though, this portfolio for RP, he's 59 years old, and some of you may be saying, well, he hasn't saved enough money for retirement. That's the first problem. Well, you know what? There's more to it than that. And this may come as a complete shock to some professionals in the financial services community that may be watching this. But there's more to proper wealth accumulation than nagging people to save more money. You know, it's hard to believe that certain people have made an entire career, quite lucrative one, out of nagging the investing public. I mean, it takes me back to my schoolboy days of living in Chicago with my mom. Toss out the garbage, walk the dog, save more money in your 401k plan. No more cappuccinos for the next 10 years. I mean, no wonder society's become so rebellious. So we're not going to nag people on today's show for not saving enough money. And by the way, as I mentioned, with RP, he's got rental income to supplement himself during retirement besides this little nest egg he's built up. These are the holdings that he's got, as you can see here. 3 holdings: Tweedy Brown Value Fund, that's a U.S. domestic fund, and then the International Value Fund. And then he's got the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF that makes up 100% of the portfolio right here. As you can see, there was a drawdown of 16% from April to September of last year. There's been a little bit of a recovery, which has been good. But the question is, which of our categories are we going to start with analyzing this portfolio? Let's spin the wheel. All right, cost is going to be our first category. And if we take a look at RP's portfolio, he's got no margin borrowing. That's good. No brokerage commissions. That's good. He's got a blended expense ratio just north of 1%, which is costing him roughly $2,300 a year in annual fees. That Tweedy Brown, when we combine the expenses on those two mutual funds, it's above 1.30%, which is pretty elevated. Now, granted, this is an actively managed mutual fund. You're going to see higher expenses compared to your traditional index mutual funds or even index ETFs. But we're going to take a look at whether paying that additional cost has been worth it. Has the performance been there for these particular funds? Next category is risk. Now, this is interesting because this, I think, is where a lot of investors get themselves in trouble. You take a look at this portfolio, he's got 100% allocated to stocks. And he's 59. He's got another 10 years to go before hanging up the cleats and retiring. And I suspect he's not going to retire fully. I suspect he'll be working in some type of part-time capacity. But the question is a 100% all equity portfolio for someone that's nearing retirement, so close? Is this the proper portfolio that matches up with how he described himself as a moderate risk taker? Well, not really. This is an aggressive risk taker, just looking at the asset allocation. And so there's a discrepancy here, RP, between how you describe yourself and how your portfolio is allocated. And I'll give you my thoughts on that in a little bit in terms of what I think you can do to improve the risk character of your portfolio. Next up is diversification. And diversification, my definition is very simple and straightforward. A portfolio must have broad asset class exposure to the core asset classes I think of in terms of the 5 biggies: stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities, and cash. That's it. Those are the 5 biggies. Now, all the other stuff like cryptocurrencies, volatility, those are all what we call sub or minor asset classes. They're not core asset classes. So you start with the core. Once you've built the core, then you can begin to get into those other ones if you want and add them as complementary pieces. In this case, we see missing exposure to 4 key areas: bonds, real estate, commodities, and cash. For those of you saying, well, he already owns real estate, why would he add more to his portfolio? Well, he's got exposure to local real estate, right, in Oregon, but he doesn't have exposure to real estate as a broad asset class. So that's the gap we need to fill. And by the way, as you're heading into retirement, that's one of those asset classes that's good for that passive dividend income. So real estate, again, besides the rental income he's getting, this can also be adding the broader diversification to the overall portfolio, getting exposure to those other areas of the real estate market, like industrial real estate and office REITs and mortgage REITs, as well as apartment REITs. All of that is encompassing in real estate. And I'll give you some ETF tickers a little bit later that I think can help with that to shore up that missing exposure. How about tax positioning? So we've got 3 buckets. The only 3 places everybody's money is located. Doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk or Warren Buffett or anyone else. There's only 3 places your money could be: tax me now, tax me later, or tax me never. And the tax me now bucket's pretty self-explanatory, right? Brokerage accounts, bank accounts, checking accounts, taxable accounts where you get a 1099. And then you got the tax me later, which is the tax-deferred accounts. You've got 401k plans, for example, 403bs. In this case, RP has a SEP IRA. That's a tax me later. You're deferring the taxes. You're not eliminating them. And so he's got the bulk of his assets. This encompasses his SEP IRA plus his wife's. Altogether, it's almost $500,000. So he's got most of the money there, and then most of the money in the tax me now bucket. But the tax me never bucket only has $14,000. So from a tax positioning perspective, we need to have more money in the tax me never bucket, because the tax me never bucket in a rising rate or rising tax rate environment, that's going to be the one place that really protects you, RP, from the threat of higher taxes in retirement. In terms of performance, RP's 1 year loss was a modest 1.73%, which was better versus a matching benchmark that aligns with his asset mix. His portfolio lost about $4,000 in value over the past year, so pretty decent performance during a relatively difficult market climate. So I applaud you for that. And one of the reasons for that is what I like most about this portfolio is the positioning to value investing. It's that tilt that right now is in vogue. It's working. It's a better approach with this type of economic environment than other equity strategies, especially growth investing, which has been underperforming. So I think from that angle, the idea of being in the value stocks is the right idea, at least tactically speaking. But there's some things I don't like about this portfolio. First of all, as we highlighted, it's under-diversified. RP's got the exposure to the stocks. That's good, but he's missing some major asset classes, as we pointed out. Also, there's no margin of safety. This portfolio has 100% equities. So we need to add an adequate cushion to this portfolio in order, I think, to make it better. There's also not enough money in the tax-free bucket. And then there's also a missing investment policy statement. So that's also a shortcoming. Now, that value fund from Tweedy Brown, that's ticker symbol TWEBX, I want to talk a little bit about that for a second, because that's going to be one of the things that we look at. Like, looking at this, if this was my money, how would I improve this portfolio? Here's a couple of ideas. Replacement candidates. So TBGVX, a replacement candidate for that would be IVLU. It's in the same zip code in terms of the type of investment it is, international value, equities. And then the same thing for TGBEX. You could swap that for the T. Rowe Price Global Stock Fund, PRGSX, which is, again, in the same category. And then you got that one dividend fund, that high dividend fund from Vanguard. Why not complement that with a completely different strategy that focuses on sustainable dividends? Take a look at SCHD from Schwab. And again, I approach this from the perspective of these are just some ideas for potential replacement candidates. And this is how I would approach it if it were my money, RP. And what else would I do to improve this portfolio? Well, I'd add, again, those major missing asset classes. I'd incorporate an adequate cushion or margin of safety, 100% equities with only a very short time horizon into retirement. When you're going to start distributing money back to yourself, this is a crucial time. You cannot afford to have major setbacks. It's not like when you're 30 or when you're 40. You have a more compressed time horizon when you head into retirement. And then two, those distributions can really put stress on your overall account. You don't want to bump into a situation where markets aren't cooperating, and you combine that with the distributions from your investment, and then all of a sudden you start to really deplete your value. So having an adequate cushion is essential. And then continue with that shift of money into the tax-free zone. We already have about $14,000 there. I would, to continue to fill up that bucket through Roth IRA contributions or possibly even Roth conversions. Yes. The tax positioning for this portfolio is interesting. And it's really, I think, the wild card for RP. He's not been adding any new contributions to this SEP IRA. And by the time he reaches RMD age of 73, this account, if he just lets it sit and grow, will be about $523,000. Now, the RMDs alone in year one on that size account are going to be about $18,000, which is below his married standard deduction, and that's good. But the problem is when you add up his other provisional income, half of Social Security plus his rental income, his RMD is still too high. And it will not be tax-free because of the other income sources piled on top of it. So he's going to have his Social Security taxed because of this. So the better strategy, rather than trying to engineer tax-free RMDs, which aren't going to be possible in the first place, I don't think, is to simply empty out the SEP IRA before your RMDs kick in. And the SEP IRA can be emptied out by taking withdrawals or by doing Roth IRA conversions, maybe one or the other, or maybe both. And so this is some of the things that can be done from a tax positioning perspective. And certainly this requires, when you start to go down this road of Roth conversions or trying to figure out, well, should I do Roth conversions or straight distributions in order to get down, get that balance down to where the RMDs are almost nothing, or most of the money is repositioned in the tax-free bucket. You got to do the math on this. And so RP, I'm working with him on helping him with some of these mathematical projections to determine which strategy is better, the RMDs or the Roth conversions or the straight distributions out of the SEP IRA ahead of RMD age. Because if he spends down that SEP IRA to zero and uses that money to sustain himself while delaying Social Security all the way to age 70, he actually may come out ahead instead of doing a Roth IRA conversion. So again, I highlight this because you need to do this. You need to do the math on this in order to determine what the strategy should be. The math gives us the answer. And, the other wild card is how long he plans to work. He's self-employed. And does he even want to work part-time past his 10-year window of work, of when he plans to work? So there's a lot to think about here. And all of this tax repositioning of assets, again, should be always done very deliberately with a mathematically proven and tested plan. But I think RP is certainly on his way. And so the question is, what can you do to improve your IRA or 401k plan or other investments? Some of you have reached out to me and you've asked me about this. Well, how can I improve? And but you're not ready. You're not ready to be on this program. And that's okay. Some of us are too shy. Some of us, don't want to be embarrassed, although the point of this program is not to embarrass anyone. It's to help you improve. And we don't criticize. Even the worst design portfolios, you'll notice, and I make a point of this because I don't want to come across as being overly judgmental, because I don't think that's the right approach. But I also think that even the worst design portfolio, I try to find something positive, right? Because we even find something that's positive, even if it's small, it's something to build on. But some of you, again, are not ready for this show. So if you want to still get some help and get some input on what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, maybe what can be improved, you can get in touch with me. Just hit the link in the description section below and you can book your one-on-one appointment. We can get to the bottom of what is going on with your investment portfolio, the strengths, the weaknesses, and ultimately just give you the confidence that you need in order to reach your investment goals. Before I go, just a quick tip for those with RMDs, also known as required minimum distributions. The recently passed Secure Act 2.0 has created a lot of confusion for retirees everywhere. The more legislation that they pass, the more everything begins to resemble splattered and scrambled eggs, just like a Jackson Pollock painting. So if you're just turned age 72 in 2022, but you forgot to take your required minimum distribution last year, do not panic. No, you're not going to face an IRS penalty because you forgot. Why? Well, because you have until April 1st of 2023 to execute your very first RMD. So there's still time to correct this. Not much time, so you got to get on it. Hurry up, get it done. This only applies, again, to people who turned age 72 last year and have not done their RMD for 2022. Again, they've got until April 1st, 2023 to get that done. That will satisfy your 2022 RMD. But guess what? You still need to take another RMD this year to satisfy your 2023 RMD. So in other words, you're going to be doing 2 RMDs in the same year. But each one is going to be applied to different or separate tax years. One other tip on this, your RMD distribution forms provided by your financial institution, you'll want to see or check that box, if it's available, that says systematic or annual withdrawals. And I recommend that for 2 reasons. First, to prevent a missed RMD distribution from happening and possible IRS penalties that follow. And also, it can help you avert the need to complete and sign RMD forms each and every year. And with those systematic RMD instructions, your financial institution will automatically calculate and send you those RMD funds to you every single year like clockwork. And if you don't, and if you end up needing a little bit of extra money over and beyond your RMD, you can still request that separately. But I think, again, having those systematic RMDs coming back at you can help you to avoid potential glitches. Well, that does it for today's episode of Portfolio Makeover. Drop me your thoughts in the comment section below. I want to hear from you. I'm Ron DeLegge. We'll see you on the next episode of Portfolio Makeover.